Morena, good morning everyone. If we could all stand, we've got our Councillor Kaumātua Tami Paukai who's going to open the meeting with a karakia.
E te ka koro matua, ngā mema o te kauni hera, ngā mema o te hāpori e huitahi nei I tēnei ata, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. E tēnā koutou hoki ngā māngai Māori e huitahi nei I rungi te reo karanga, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. E te atua kaharawa, anei mātou e tuku whakamoe miti whakawhetai ki a koe I tēnei ata. To our Creator, we send our special blessing to you that you can shine upon us on this very special day. E te atua whakatongi a tō wairua tapu ki roto ki tēnā o mātou hei arahi I rungi te tika me te pono. May you put your blessing upon us today, that we walk in the proverbial sayings that have come down to the people on earth. Ki te hunga ko whetūrangi tia ko huri hia hei karupi I atata, te rā te tuahine o te kingi, moi mai I rutui, te ariki. Also, to our loved ones who have gone beyond the veil, also extend our acknowledgement and grievance to the sister of the King who have gone. We farewell you all, return home to that special place that we call Hawaii Nui. Kia koutou e hui tahi nei, tēnei te whakawhetai kia koe waiho mā te atua, e tui e whakakotahi tātou o kirikiri roa, o te riu o Waikato kia hiko E tahi, hei paenga mo ngā iwi kato o kirikiri roa. May that blessing come upon us all as we walk united together in the city called Kirikiriroa, in the Waikato Basin and in Aotearoa, to build our country as great as it is in this part of the world. Nō reira koutou e hui tahi nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, kaheke. Te koro matua.
Okay, we'll start with apologies. We have apologies from, sorry. I open this council meeting on the 14th of March 2019 at 9:37 a.m. And welcome you all here and visitors as well. Thank you for coming. I just want to let members know that there will be photos being taken today, and so that's myself as chair are approving that, so there will be photos taken at different stages through the day. And I also, although the democracy manager is going to read through the agenda, I asked for flexibility on the agenda to get we've got one member who needs to leave, and we may have a late lunch because of that, to get through to the paper that is of particular interest to that member, and also to get through as many people who are in the public gallery as fast as possible so they can get away and get on with their day as well. So so just if you can give us, even although we will be setting the agenda, if you can agree to some flexibility around it to allow us to move things around as we see fit. Councillor Paula.
I just want to put on record, I'm the person that has to leave early, and so I do appreciate any movement so that I can report the findings from my own committee and another item. I just wanted to make people aware that the reason I'm leaving early today is because my daughter gets married tomorrow and I have to travel to the venue. So I'm not being here for a light reason. There's a big agenda. I would love to have been here for the whole agenda, but for that reason I will be leaving early.
So Councillor Paula would like to get away early afternoon, and so because of that we may not have lunch till after 1 o'clock. So Councillor Angela.
Just an inquiry, what's the purpose of the photos? Are they organisational photos or?
No, they're photos for the use of the media.
So is it Waikato Times or something, or?
Yes, it's Waikato Times.
Okay, that's great.
Apologies, we have Councillor Paula and Councillor Mallett for early departures. That doesn't mean you're dying early, it means you're leaving the meeting early. Is there any other apologies? Okay, so moved by myself, moved by Councillor Paula, seconded by Councillor Mallett. All those for, any against, carried. Confirmation of agenda, I'll pass over to the Democracy Manager, Leanne Jordan.
Kia ora tātou. This morning in confirming the agenda, elected members are requested to note that the agenda is requested, sorry, too many requests. I caught myself, Councillor Mallett. So, in confirming the agenda this morning, Council is requested to note that the debate is proposed to be 2 minutes with an extension of 1 minute if required, that the period of time set aside for public forum be extended past 30 minutes as per section 13.8.2b of the standing orders to accommodate speakers if required. And lastly, that item 13, update on Hamilton eyesight review, is to be taken after item 11, which is Hamilton City Council's draft 1 submission to the Well Energy Trust 2019-20 draft annual plan to accommodate staff and elected member availability. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Robb. So question.
Yeah, I may sound like a warped record here, but I am concerned about the debate being for 2 minutes with a 1 minute extension. That is not in accordance with current standing orders, and I think that, as has already been alluded to, there are some pretty meaty topics in today's discussion. So with your indulgence, Chair, I'm asking for the normal 5 minutes, which is in accord with standing orders, be extended to, and these are mine, but other councillors may have other agenda items. Item 8, item 13, item 14 and item 18.
Item 14's gone.
No, it's only part-time.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so standing orders takes precedence. One person says, I don't want it, that's how it is. Just want to remind members, this takes over an hour for us to debate this way, when we can cut it down to less than half an hour at 3 minutes. But like I say, one member objects, I do not have a choice, so we'll accept what you're saying, Councillor Robb. Any other questions? Councillor Paula?
On that, I think the thing that takes up the most time quite often is the questioning, so I think an equity around the questioning and maybe some tightening around the amount of time taken for any one individual to question will help.
There are no standing orders for me to limit the amount of questions that can be asked under the standing orders that we're working under today, so I don't have control over that, sorry. Councillor Jeff?
Mayor Andrew, you can exercise your discretion from what I've read there, if questions are repetitive, or if they're not proportionate to the issue, you do have that discretion.
Any other comments or questions?
To use it, that's all good.
Okay. The way I read the standing orders is that under the standing orders we're working under, people can ask questions for, I can't limit the questions, I can limit debate, which has been turned down. I can't limit question times under these orders. There are new standing orders coming out, which we're voting on today. They will apply going forward if that gets through, but today we're working under the old standing orders.
Could I ask that we have some advice on that from the governance manager?
Look, no, Councillor Angela, I'm chairing the meeting and I've made my call on that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so that's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robb. All those for? Any against? Carried. Gary, where are you? Are you for or against? Okay, declarations of interest. There are no declarations of interest. I'll hand over to the Democracy Manager on Public Forum.
Right, welcome to members of the public gallery this morning. Nau mai, haere mai. Shortly I'll start asking you to come forward in order to address the elected members. Can one of my team over here, Rebecca, will guide you forward to the desk up the front here. Just to let you know that this morning, particularly with the number of people we have here, speaking time including questions will be 3 minutes. A bell will go when you have a minute to go. So a bell will go at 2 minutes, and that means you've got a minute to wrap up. So this morning our first speaker is Carolyn McKenzie. Kia ora, Carolyn. Carolyn is representing the Hamilton Residents and Ratepayers Association, and she is speaking to item 18 on the agenda, which is standing orders.
If other members of your team want to come up and stand behind you, I'm quite comfortable with that, just to for support.
Thanks. Good morning. I'm Carolyn McKenzie, representing the residents, ratepayers, renters, commercial business and developers of Hamilton. A little bit about me, so you don't think I'm some nutty old broad who's standing up here determined to share my information with you. I've lived in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Boston, London and Sydney most of my life. So I have a little experience of large cities and now of a small town. They have their unique difficulties and tribulations, benefits and rewards, and they all have their ratepayers. As major stakeholders financing infrastructure and services to this wonderful town of ours, we're invested in Hamilton, particularly in its administration and its governance. For this reason, we speak today regarding your standing orders. It is entirely unreasonable that you are given documents of 700 pages or more and 3 days prior to voting in the major decisions associated with that. So, such as the 10-year plan, for instance, for the city. This cannot produce good governance, and all elected members should be saying, I am confused, and refusing to make any decision at all. Therefore, Hamilton City Council will need to direct their staff to provide documents in sufficient time for them to be read, discussed, understood, and only then to be put to a vote. Staff should improve communications. There's no longer any case for legalese language. Harvard Business School regards it as very old-fashioned and designed to obscure the true nature of the information. So we are providing a simple set of key performance indicators, or KPIs, to resolve some of this dilemma. Please refer to the benchmarks in the printed material in front of you. You can make a difference with a 75% majority vote and thereby attain better governance and democracy today. Are there any questions?
There are no questions, so
No?
thank you.
So that's it.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Our next speakers this morning are Lale Irimia and Richard Coventry. They're representing the Perry Group. Both are speaking to item 14, Special Housing Areas Area Expressions of Interest, round 2. Gentlemen, it's 3 minutes between you, so however you wish to divide the time. Welcome.
We just wanted to come forward to talk about the SHA with regard to supporting the next series of applications coming forward. We're concerned about, one, how long the first applications have taken, and we're hoping that what we're seeing in the current paper reflects the fact that we've learnt from the timeframes taken and the processes undertaken in that first stage to accelerate through the next piece. The second part of it is, in government looking to repeal that SHA, we implore the council to push and support the fact that we are missing tools to deliver houses in this area at the moment. If we were to describe the SHA simply, it is a machete for the long grass with which a normal lawnmower then would still undertake the process through the RMA. That's all it's doing for us at the moment. But we can't get one single large-scale SHA over the line in town here at the moment. And when compared to the benchmarks around the country in terms of the timeframes taken, we are taking an extremely long time through that process. The government's change between MB and MHUD hasn't helped. in that process, and we feel that, you know, we're moving into almost a repetition of the technical review that this council has already undertaken on the SHAs provided to the government. So in terms of moving forward, we would support the council's push towards asking the government to be more clear, more transparent, more collaborative in the approaches for whatever tool that they may now look to put in place going forward. Just hand over to Richard.
Thanks, Lali. Yeah, I guess we started down the SHA track a couple of years ago, and we did a lot of research and looked into the process and how quickly it was processed in other regions. And typically they'd take 3 months from the time a local council would sign them off. And we're sort of 9 months in waiting, and as Lali said, there's been a lot of interference in Wellington from MHUD, and it really goes against the intent of the Act, which was to release more land for affordable housing. We'd just like to ask Council to seek more clarity from this government around their support for current SHAs and SHAs to come, and if not, unless we see that the Act's going to be repealed, what tools are they going to introduce, and when are they coming, and how will they be administered?
Thank you.
Okay, we've got time for one question. Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Two-part question. And
No, one question. Sorry, we've got 14 seconds.
Actually, you raised some of the questions that I wanted to ask, but one question I will ask is, I read that the government was overloaded with the amount of applications, so that the current applications, some of them at the tail end might not get through. Do you think that council should play a role in at least seeking for this whole tranche of applications to go through before it's repealed? And I take your point about the other tools. Yeah. But I think I just read that in the Herald last night, that the government itself saying, well, you know, you can apply, but we haven't got the resources to deal with it. There may be some. Your view on that, please?
So the view is, if government weren't repeating what the regional councils were obliged to deliver in the first place, so the technical recommendation is provided by the regional councils and not repeated by government. So if MHUD were to review the factors to what MB used to deliver, which was more the regulatory overview of compliance as opposed to reviewing the technical aspects again, I think they would move through it a lot quicker than where they are now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's not a point of order, Councillor. It's a
Question or something?
question, and it's down and it's being fixed while we speak, so
thank you.
it will come back.
Right, thank you. Our next speaker this morning is Bridie Sweetman. Welcome, Bridie. I understand you've travelled to be with us this morning. Bridie is representing the New Zealand Prostitutes Collective, and she is speaking to item 12, the Prostitution Bylaw Review, Determination and Consultation. Thank you, Bridie. 3 minutes.
And kia ora koutou, thank you for your time today. I just wish to reiterate points I've made in written submissions and to some of you earlier during a couple of weeks ago during a public briefing. The primary issue that we have with this bylaw is it's harmful, and that's in terms of both public outcome and violence. To leave the bylaw as it currently is, you would be doing so with blood on your hands. The second point I wish to raise is this bylaw is unnecessary. Auckland and Wellington have chosen not to adopt bylaw approaches, and when there have been issues, have found great success with collaborative approaches. I've personally been involved with a collaborative approach as an alternative to a regulatory approach in Christchurch, and residents have described the program as worth its weight in gold. The third point I wish to make is the bylaw's current legal status. The bylaw as it currently stands is inconsistent with the Prostitution Reform Act and the Bill of Rights Act. And finally, I just wish to highlight that any issues that may arise as a result of repealing this bylaw can be addressed under existing legislation, such as the Summary Offences Act, and regulations such as the District Plan and the Home-Based Occupation Rules. I'm now happy to receive questions.
Okay, thank you. There are no questions. Councillor Paula.
So one of the main points you made there, was it that what's drafted here is inconsistent with legislation,
Yes.
but there are other legislations that can support the outcomes we're seeking?
How Auckland and Wellington have chosen to address any concerns, for example, if there's concerns about disorderly behaviour, that's addressed under the Summary Offences Act. If there are concerns about the number of people working from home, that's addressed under the home-based occupation rules. So the tools are already in place. I should probably add, Rotorua and Tauranga have similar bylaws to this bylaw, and elected members of the Rotorua Council have indicated that they see the bylaw as unnecessary, and staff members of the Tauranga Council have amended the bylaw, the proposed bylaw, in accordance with our recommendations. So it's quite likely that soon we'll see it won't just be Auckland and Wellington, it will also be Rotorua and Tauranga. So Hamilton would be bucking the trend should it choose to either keep this bylaw or not amend it considerably.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speakers this morning are Bert and Robin Jackson. Bert and Robin are speaking to item 12, prostitution bylaw review, determination and consultation. Welcome to you both. 3 minutes to share between you, however you like. Thank you.
He rangatira mā tēnā koutou. We're Bert and Robin Jackson. On the question of the suggestion to do away with our prostitution bylaws ban on street soliciting, because it's held to be in conflict with the Human Rights Act, it would be a big decline in the ambiance of our city if prostitutes were able to start soliciting on our streets, and it would be offensive and a public nuisance to many people, which is what the bylaw at the moment and the Local Government Act protects us from. So we trust that Council will not just give up on this at the first sign of a challenge, but will defend it and will look for ways to make it compatible or make it so it can work with the Human Rights Act, but not just let it go. Now over to my wife, Robin.
So we see that there's a proposal for allowing 1 or 2 prostitutes to operate brothels in the suburbs. We ask this proposal be removed from consideration. Over 1,300 people made submissions on this issue back in 2004. Most were against brothels in the suburbs, and Council bravely took it to court at the ratepayers' expense, our bylaw, where it was upheld. We're concerned for a number of reasons, too many to mention in this short time, but we're concerned about the safety of children in the houses where prostitution would be taking place. We know sometimes drugs, gangs and pimps are involved, and there can be issues around drunk or violent clients. Currently, our bylaw keeps brothels away from sensitive sites, but should it be allowed in the suburbs? What about those families who are homeschooling their children and small home-based care centres of 1 or 2 children? How would their sensitive site be protected? Just the family home is the sensitive site. What about younger women who, on seeing they can run a brothel at their home, would give it a try, where they would have otherwise not thought of it, and become enticed into what many ex-prostitutes have shared with us, becomes a dehumanising, abusive lifestyle. The other issue, should they be allowed in the suburbs, is around the change of the ethos of the street and safety of older or single woman home on their own. There have been repeated incidents of clients knocking on wrong doors looking for the brothel. One person reported children could no longer play out the front because of the characters that were now walking up and down the street looking for the brothel. Also, she said she was in continual fear, to be quite honest. Another said there were numerous cars, and I mean numerous, this got on the front page of the Waikato Times because of it, in their quiet suburban street, waiting their turn when 2 prostitutes were operating from a house there. Also, should we allow them in the suburbs, we will get more of them. Our current bylaw gives power to families and the vulnerable to actually do something when these are operating in their streets. Also, many actually simply did not think that a human being selling their bodies for sex, they felt it undermined human dignity, and they didn't want their children or grandchildren growing up around them.
Thank you.
Our next speaker in public forum this morning is Lindsay Cumberpatch, speaking to item 10, Social Housing Fund Update. Good morning, Lindsay. You might like to introduce your colleague, as I don't have your name. Apologies. 3 minutes, however you wish to share it. The bell will go at 2 minutes.
Thank you. Morena tātou. I'm Lindsay Cumberpatch from the D.V. Bryant Trust, and this is my colleague and friend Yvonne Wilson from the Runanga o Kirikiriroa, and from the Waikato Housing Hub, and from the Māori Housing Foundation. Nā rau tātangi. So we're here to speak in support of Andy Mannering's update report on the Social Housing Fund and its recommendation to establish a local land trust. As a representative of the Coalition of the Willing, and that includes community funders, and I also acknowledge the presence of John Gallagher, who's here, representing the Gallagher Charitable Trust, and another member of the Waikato Community Funders Forum, and several of our colleagues send their apologies for this morning, unable to be with us, but also other members of the community housing sector. Peter Humphreys from the Hamilton Christian Night Shelter Trust is here, and Sam Rose from Sharma, who recently completed a case study for a community land trust for Kirikiriroa, Hamilton. We believe that this suggestion of a community land trust is a very positive and appropriate use of the $2 million that's coming back to Council from the sale of the pensioner housing stock earlier. Some of us were concerned that the initial proposal to invest $400,000 over 5 years in social housing research, administration, concept designs and consent costs could have been frittered away on small projects, whereas the suggestion of spending investing $1 million a year for 2 years gives us a quantum of money that hopefully other parties like community funders, central government, iwi and business might match, and then we have a not insignificant amount of money to begin to do something meaningful to address the current housing crisis. The report makes reference to the work of the Waikato Plan Regional Housing Initiative in quantifying the scale of the housing challenge across our region and the range of options available to address those challenges. I'm on the Regional Housing Initiative Working Group along with Lale Irumia, who spoke previously, and others. And Louis Brahm, our researcher, has worked with the established statistics that are available, and we believe the current supply deficit is around 3,000 homes and housing units in our city here of Kirikiriroa, Hamilton. The update report also rightly draws attention to the challenge of affordability. We're concerned that the report highlights the fact that Hamilton is the third least affordable city in the country after Tauranga and Auckland. A land trust is an internationally proven mechanism for establishing perpetual affordability by taking the cost of land out of the housing equation. Sam showed that in our report, and we as a Bryant Trust know that because of our history with the Waikato land settlement in the 1930s. In 2007, the Queenstown Lakes District Council acknowledged that they had a housing affordability problem and helped establish the Queenstown Lakes Community Housing Trust. They offer models that assist people into ownership for that missing middle that the report recognises in Andy's report, people that earn too much to qualify for social housing, but not enough to afford market housing. We congratulate the author of the report on this suggestion. We'd like to see the Council as an active partner with us on this project. We're aware that there's a small parcel of land that might become available to us that could actually be the beginnings of a community land trust here in our city. Right. Thank you. I could have said more.
There's no There is no time for questions. Yvonne, is there anything you'd like to add coming from a totally different organisation?
I think it's really important that the council use really good common sense around the expenditure of this money. This money came from pensioner housing, I understand, and as we've also got a very, very quick ageing population, and there's a lot of displacement around our older people, that you'd also be, in the Lands Trust, we'd also be considering those factors as well. Kia ora.
Good morning. Samantha? Samantha, welcome. Samantha Rose is speaking to item 10, Social Housing Fund Update. You know how it goes by now, Samantha. Thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora, everybody. So I'm here today as a community development professional, as a professional staff member of SHAMA, the Hamilton Ethnic Women's Trust. I wrote the feasibility report for establishing a community land trust for perpetually affordable housing for Hamilton as funded by the Well Trust. And I'm also a member of the Waikato Regional Plan Housing Initiative Working Group. So, and I'm also one of these people who kind of fall in the cracks of also earning just too much and not enough to be able to get into the housing. And so I'm able to see from that perspective. So I wrote this report because I do believe it is the way to go. It's the best use of public money. As I said, it's perpetually affordable housing, so it makes the best use of the housing subsidies, which can then be recycled for generations. The model is very successful. It's been going for 50 years between America and the UK, and now it's getting established in Australia. There are tens of thousands of homes that are successfully owned by individuals and families in the Community Land Trust in America. And there are lots of successful training programs in terms of building our capacity as a city to be able to run a community land trust with all of the resources and tools that we would need to do that. There's Grounded Solutions in America, the Community Land Trust Network in the UK that we can draw on to help us to establish and run this community land trust. In terms of respecting the treaty and the Indigenous worldview, the Community Land Trust recognizes that land is a community asset that should benefit the community, and looks at putting then the land and then the housing that would be on that land in the hands of the community. And to say also that we are fortunate that we have this opportunity. It feels like a crisis at the moment with housing, but a crisis is a fantastic opportunity to take on something different that we haven't yet done before. We haven't done it before, but many other communities have been doing it for decades. So although we might feel a little bit nervous going into this new concept, there is already a lot of support in this community. I've been meeting with people over the last year about it. And I do think we have the capacity to do it, or we can call upon those successful organizations to help us to get ours established. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Samantha. So our next speakers this morning are James Fetu and Bella Takiari-Brame. Both are Mongo Māori with Hamilton City Council, so welcome to you both. They are here to speak to item 8, the Chair's report.
Tēnā tātou, he mihi tuatahi ki te atua I runga rawa, Uhu Karaiti, His Worship, councillors, to the chambers and to all the community members who are here today. Tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou katoa. So yes, my name's James Fitu, beside me is Māngai Bella, and we're here to support, rally our support around the recommendation in the Chair's report, item 8. And with that was, I suppose, to demonstrate our support in the leadership of the council, in partnership with Waikato Tainui, Te Runanga o Kirikiriro, as well as Te Ha. And us 5 māngai, myself, Oli, Te Pora, Norm, Māngai, Norman, and Bella, around getting us here to support council, be part of council's working.
and advancing where we can issues as they relate to Māori. So with respect to the motion that's been put forward through the Chair's report, again, we're here to support the efforts of a report by Council in addressing, which we understand is the cultural appropriateness of the names within Hamilton. And earlier this morning you heard from a lovely lady speaking about the blood on the hands. If I can be provocative in saying there is blood on the hands of many of those names in Hamilton, and it does create a cultural offence and a sensitivity to Māori here in Waikato. So again, I'm trying to be a bit provocative. It is a healing matter for many Māori here in Mana Whenua, and it'll be fantastic if we can support Council in that progress, whether in that report, yes, I suppose demonstrate the leadership that Hamilton City Council has been shown to date in regards to working with Māori and the cultural appropriateness within the city.
Bella, is there anything you'd like to add?
Tēnā tātou. Just like to add to Māngai James, in terms of my tamariki, it's a message that I proposed when I first started as Māngai Māori, that I want my children to be proud of who they are and to stand in a city that supports all the ethnicities that they are part of. They are Māori, they are Samoan, they are English, they are Irish. And in terms of supporting a name change to Māori names and in support of our traditional names and our acknowledging our history, will be a city that they will be proud to be part of. Kia ora tātou.
Lovely, thank you very much, Mongo, Bella and James. And I also want to acknowledge Tipura, who's sitting down in the back corner. Thank you for being here and support as well.
Our next speaker in public forum this morning is Roger Stratford. Roger is speaking to item 8, the Chair's report. Welcome, Roger. Yeah. No rush. We know it's a bit of a walk to get up to the front here. Thank you, Roger. Bell at 2 minutes and 2 bells at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. Speaking on the issue of cultural appropriateness, to contrary to the speakers, I don't go along with what the speakers just before me have said. I'd prefer, as a long-term resident, to retain the names of English streets, English language streets, specifically Grey Street and Von Tempsky Street. These streets have a strong heritage status in the city. We're looking after our buildings. We put in a huge amount of effort looking after our buildings. And I think we should look after our streets as well. I'd just like to point out that in the Hamilton Library's historic collection, we've got, for the calendar on September of this year, we've got a photo here. I'd like to show you briefly, and I'll be around later on so people can have a proper look at it. It says it shows an image of Grey Street in 1939 to 40. So I don't believe there's a public demand for such a change. I just think that, as we see today, it's a standing order, a catering for Te Tanga Māori, and it's not necessary to have a look into this thing. Just on the topic of the streets, Grey Street and Von Tempsky Street, I'd like to strengthen their position as heritage sites in Hamilton by proposing the commission of statues in those streets. One of the first Prime Minister, first Premier of New Zealand, George Grey, and Count, and he's got a long list of names, Von Tempsky. to put those statues up. They're commissioning of 2 statues, and I've got some support from this from, I believe, that in December 2017 at the council meeting, Dame Margaret Evans, former mayor of the city, specifically advocated for more heritage sites. More heritage statues, and I think that fits in this really well. Thank you very much. I hope I've made myself clear, and I'd like to invite any questions.
Councillor Dave.
Thank you. Roger, you mentioned the need for a strong heritage connection there. Do you think that heritage for Hamilton only started in 1863, or was there heritage before that?
No, there was certainly heritage before then. I see where you're getting with this issue here, but as I say before, we've got standing orders, and where we have a Maori representative on council now, so I think it's to give the other side a fair go is reasonable in this case, and I don't think there's a public demand for name changes of these streets.
So you agree there was heritage before 1863?
Okay, that's the last question.
Thanks.
Yes.
You can answer that, but that's the last question.
Yes. I'm not sure whether I've finished answering it. I just wanted to point out further about the question of atrocities, which is the main objection to the existing naming of the streets, and that's a very important point. I'd just like to say that there's blame on both sides of blame on both sides in that respect, and the naming of the streets does not necessarily mean that we endorse the names of the person who the streets are named after. We can look at the name. I went to school on Grey Street when I first came here, and it had no significance to me that it was of a historical person.
Thank you, Roger.
Our last speaker in public forum this morning is Jason Aki from Waikato Tainui. Welcome, Jason. Thank you for being here with us this morning. You're speaking to item 8, the Chair's report.
Right. Kia ora tātou. Kia ora tātou I runga I ngā āhuatanga o te wā. Nā mihi atu rā ki a koe te koromatua, uti rā ki a koutou katoa, ngā māngai katoa o tēnei o ngā rohe, nō reira ka mihi. I'm here to represent, commonly known as the power sub off the bench, at Waikato Tainui. My name's Jason Ake. I'm the GM of Communications and Engagement at the tribe. We have submitted a letter supporting the proposition that the historical narratives in this region ought to represent more fairly the views that we have as a tribe. Insofar as Waikato Tainui has been following the issue around the renaming of the streets in Hamilton City, it has always remained a significant issue for our people, given that some of those street names reflect colonial figures who engaged in colonial land invasion that led to the dispossession and alienation of our people from our ancestral homelands. Bryce, Grey and Von Tempsky streets represent for us a daily and contemporary reminder of people who committed acts of atrocities to our people. The effects of their actions still resonate strongly because we have never ever recovered as a people in this region. The streets glorify, in our view, the contribution that these individuals have made toward 135 years of deprivation. That does not form, and we believe it should not form, the basis of a narrative that we should celebrate every day in Waikato. In 1995, Parliament heard how the Waikato invasion, because that's what it was wrongful, totally unjustified. The confiscations were unjust, and Waikato Tainui, far from being in rebellion, were in fact defending hearth and home. The Waikato War and the confiscations that followed caused devastation, and we put it to the Council that being woken up every day and walking past those streets and having a tangible reminder in the form of a street that represents those values which do not align in a contemporary society with any values that are just and are also humane, ought not to be reflected in our street names. Questions?
Thank you. Can I ask you who authorised? Can I ask what authorisation this information from Tainui has, who it's come from?
So that's from the Rukumoana Schaffhausen, who's the chair of Te Aratota, our governing body, executive governing body, and also from Donna Flavel, the chief executive. We've got the letter here. It'll be tabled. It's been tabled and left with you.
So are those the two highest positions in the tribe outside of the ruling family?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're now moving to item 5, confirmation of council open minutes, page 6. Moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those for, any against, carried unanimously. We now move to item 6, confirmation of elected members' briefing notes, 31st of January 2019. Moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those for, any against, carried unanimously.
The Well Energy Trust consultation. Is that the...
What page are you on?
So I'm on page 22. I'm not quite sure which load of minutes we're doing.
Yeah, no.
Oh, it's the next item. Okay, thank you.
We now move to item 7, page 21. Councillor Gary.
Yeah, just...
it's confirmation of the elected members' briefing notes, 14th of February 2019. For the
thank
record.
You.
So what page are you on, Gary?
So I'm on page 22. It's paragraph 1, and it's... I think there should be an addition to the points. I asked for the total value of the rebates that had been returned to the community through the Well Energy Trust rebate scheme, and from memory it was $300 or $330 million, and that was a material piece of information which hasn't been recorded in the briefing notes. So I'd like those added, please. And sorry, I can't remember if it was 300 million or 330 million.
So to be clear, Councillor Mallett, what we record is the question, not the answer. So we will note for the briefing note record that the question was asked about the distribution of rebates to members, as you described it. We have the audio transcript of the note, so we'll go back and reflect that in the notes.
Thank you.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mallett. All those for, any against, carried. Notings. Okay, we now move to item 8, page 25. So I intend to take this paper as separate items. So there are 3 items there. So we'll start with cultural appropriateness. I have an amended motion to go on the board, which should come up now. Do you want to wait for that, Jeff, or? Seconded by Councillor Paula. Okay, Councillor Robb.
Just a question on issues of cultural sensitivity and having regard to the speakers that we've heard this morning. It seems to me that are we focusing simply on the names? Are we simply focusing on issues of cultural sensitivity that relate to what I call, and I may be wrong in this, the wars, the activities that occurred post the involvement of Europeans in the Waikato? Is it a sole focus? I mean, does it include, and again, I'm not sure now whether we're going to get a terms of reference on this, does it include pre-European Maori conflicts? Does it include areas of cultural sensitivity that might have occurred and that may be offensive to people in the city post what we might term the 1860s and the Maori wars that were fought during that period?
So this is directly between Hamilton City Council and Tainui, and the offences that have come through during the time from European occupation of the Waikato forward.
Is it therefore fair to everybody to be considering just that particular window of time and not other cultural sensitivity that may be offending Hamilton City residents?
It's the purpose of the motion is directly to cover from European settlement on. That is the purpose of the motion, and that is the purpose of the report that's been asked for.
Thank you.
I'd just also I'd like to point out that Waikato Tainui in the partnership with Hamilton City Council have agreed to pay half of the costs for this report as well. So this is very important to Waikato Tainui, and they see it as a partnership process, and they have agreed with the acting chief executive this morning to pay for half of the costs. So this is possibly the first time that this has happened in our city. So it shows the high level of interest that Waikato Tainui have in this.
Chair, can I therefore ask, from that statement you've just made, does that also include half the cost of remedying any outcomes from the study?
No, the high-level report will come back to council to decide where to from here. So all this is a high-level report to come back to council. There are no actions going to be taken from this report. It'll be coming back to this council to pick it up from there and decide where to from there. So we're not agreeing to anything apart from a report, a high-level report. We're not agreeing to changes. We're agreeing for a report to come back to this council to then, for council to decide the pathway forward from there, or if we do anything. Councillor Paula.
Just be straightforward since you've raised this up to high level now, but cost, do we know a cost? Is this staff time and their staff time? Is it done through the budget that exists for through our JMA work? Joint management agreement, sorry.
There's a bit of that, but just conferring with Muna and Sean, that we would engage a outside party that's appropriate around the history of the names and that sort of thing. So, and we believe that won't be more than $10,000, but probably more around the $5,000 or $6,000, but potentially up to 10,000.
So why I've seconded this, I just need to get my question straight then, is that because it's a report about cultural sensitivity. So I'm seeing it as quite a high level and quite a broad document, not just about a couple of particularly named streets at this time. It's supposed to be a broader piece of work. I see some nods at the back, and that's the intention is for it to be broad.
It's a high level
and broad.
We're not drilling down.
A first look at what.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to be sure before I remained as the seconder. Thank you.
Councillor Jeff.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. Yeah, just following on from Paula's question there, I'm just trying, so are we going, Bryce Street, Grey Street and Von Temsky Street have been mentioned this morning by Speaker. Are we suggesting now that this is a broader scope, that we're basically going mining for whatever we can find?
No, we're not drilling down at all. This is a helicopter view of the situation to then come back to council.
So not just on these streets that have been named, or it's just looking for everything, is it?
No, it can't look at everything.
What is it looking for then?
This is just a high-level view to get back feedback on where, how Tainui feel about the names that are in the street, and to bring back a report for us to then make a decision on where we go to with it from there. So this is like the first step in a conversation in an official way.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Just on that cultural appropriateness, it says to confirm an accepted view of historical events. Shouldn't it be an accurate event? It's in your chair's report. I mean, we can accept a view of historical events, but shouldn't they be accurate?
Yes, they certainly need to be accurate, and that's a part of what this work's about.
Yeah, so can we change that? Because I don't agree with accepted.
So exactly whereabouts are you, Councillor?
In the cultural appropriateness on page, 26, and it's the third line down.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine with me. If we can change that for the report, please. Councillor Angela.
Thank you. Just a question to the Deputy CE. Will this align with our roads and naming policy that we have now? Because that speaks to the cultural appropriateness and awareness of when we do name things.
That will come into it. That'll be looked at. That'll be part of it. Obviously, our staff can do that part of it. The historical aspect of it will need to obviously work with Tainui and potentially a consultant. But obviously, we'd look at all the local government and street naming aspects of naming of street places, names, parks, those sorts of things. So we'd bring that information back to councillors.
So if there was any conflict showing in the policy, that will form part of that high-level report.
Yeah, and what might flow out of that, there might be a potentially, I'm not saying it will, but there could be a review of a policy or something like that, but we don't know that at this stage.
No.
Councillor Mark.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. Can I go back to Jeff's question again about the scope? I didn't quite understand your answer there. You were saying it's broad and high level, but it's not broad enough to cover everything. Can you explain that to me, please? Well, I don't quite understand what this thing's going to look like and what we're going to do as a result of it.
I think there'll be thousands of street names and different names that this council has authority over to change to different policies that we have. And it certainly won't be drilling down into a broad range of names. It will be coming back with feedback from Waikato Tainui. It'll be coming back. It'll be possible that the University of Waikato may be a part of this report to bring back accurate historical information as well as a part of this report, to then put us in the position, like I say, the first words that are spoken in a conversation with engaging with Māori for the first time that the city would have done, to open this conversation, to then come back to this council, for this council then to decide what the next step will be, if anything.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I take it that Waikato Tainui have been domiciled at 2 Bryce Street for a while now. Why haven't they complained before?
It's very likely we haven't had a council who's been open enough to listen up until now, but I think it's been identified at this council with bringing Manga Māori on board, with having an open mind and with working in partnership with Tainui, are now open where they feel that the timing's right for them to be able to ask and work with us on a program like this.
I just think it's quite funny. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robb.
Question. To the Deputy CE, are you aware of the report that was done in 2003 called Māori Landmarks in Riverside Reserves, which was an 87-page report compiled, I think, over a period of 8 years, involving most of the local hapu. And in part two of that report, it considered Maori place names and the sharing of those names and those ancestors, both Māori and Pākehā, in celebrating the history of the city. My question is, are we risking now a repetition of a report that has previously been prepared that may hold the key to the issues that have now been brought to the table?
The answer to your question, yes, I am aware of that. I'm not, second part, I'm not fully conversant with it, page by page or anything like that, without trying to be smart or anything like that. But the latter part of your question, I think it's about, obviously that would be part of what we review. There's obviously been some good work, some good information that's gone in there previously. 2003, it's now 2019. I think it's probably looking at the context of where council is, where the community is, where Waikato Tainui is, and I think it's probably be worthwhile reviewing that. And I think it probably goes beyond that plan as well. That's around our parks and that sort of thing. Obviously, there's street names. We've got a bunch of other council facilities and assets and that sort of thing.
But parks are included in the motion.
Yes.
I know this is entitled Riverside, but it did, in the context of the report,
so that wouldn't
extend beyond the Riverside.
That would have helped, that report would help inform the new report.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just a bit concerned that we might be that. I'll leave discussion for debate. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving to debate. Councillor Paula.
Super quick. Let me start off by saying that the way this has come to the council table has been clumsy and rushed, and put us all in a very difficult situation to try and assimilate this information in a short period of time. But obviously I've retained an open mind on that because I wanted to hear what people were able to say today, and I respect the feedback that we've received from the Māngai Māori and Tainui here today. I don't believe this report needed to have come here like this at this time, not at all, because we have a very good relationship with Mātāwaka and also with Tainui through our joint management agreement, and I feel in the first place that could have been better worked through there. However, Mayor Andrew, you have now lifted the motion to be very broad, which is good, because I was going to raise the question, can we think about this whole issue very broadly? Strengthening the voice and the mana of Māori is something I supported wholeheartedly when I was on the regional council, and this was through enhancements of te reo and tikanga as we went. So in that basis, I am going to support this. You've assured us that the sum is not large. I'd like to think that that can come from existing budgets, and I appreciate the Tainui partnership. We can't keep dropping things in from now until the end of this term of politics that cost money. We've really got to be quite measured and quite effective. But this one I'm prepared to support at this time, and you don't know what you don't know till you find out your information. So that's where I'm at with this one. Thank you.
Councillor Robb.
The staff just had a split screen up there where you can see the time and the amendment, and the motion. We can't see the motion now. Can you put that? Thank you. Although it's quite small now.
Councillor Robb. Just to remind members that it is on your screen in front of you.
That's even smaller.
Yeah, double click on it.
One on one side, one on the other.
One of the screens isn't working.
Okay, I think we won't have the time up in this case, and we'll have a bell ring a minute before, and multiple bells ring once we're up. Time's up. Just keep ringing it. Okay. Councillor Dave. Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thank you, and I remind too that it's 5 minutes for this item. Yeah. Look, I'm just a little bit concerned that this motion, and I think this motion is better than the one that was in the report, has grown out of concern over street names. If you look at the streets in Claudelands and in Hamilton East, you'll find every second street is named after some of those initial settlers in Hamilton post the Maori Wars, and they would have been part of that aggressor group that was identified earlier this morning in the public forum. So I think we potentially are opening up a Pandora's box if it remains that the focus of the study is going to be around the street names. Also concerned too that it's being limited by the fact that we are only considering this area in Hamilton's history. There are street names, there are names of streets in Hamilton named after Maori chiefs who were aggressors here in the pre-European times. And indeed there are street names of erstwhile politicians post the Maori War who did create a certain amount of cultural and political insensitivity beyond that. And so we may again, if we remain focused on street names and park names, we may well open up that Pandora's box and find that we've got a lot of work and a lot of cost already on our books to work on. I'm also concerned too that a lot of this work has already been done. I have had a brief read through the 87 pages of the report I referred to in question time, and there was ample input, as I could read, in those 87 pages of feedback, not just from Waikato Tainui, but also from the hapu within this region. And over a period of 8 years, which was the period in which these groups met, I would have thought that would have been a pretty good and well thought through report. So I would be concerned if this motion is successful that report gets ignored in this new state of view. So that's me. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Look, there's a lot of fear every time issues like this come up, peddled around the community. We've heard a little bit of it here in one or two submissions today. I'm always reminded in this debate that when the National Geographic Board or Names Board changed the name of Mount Egmont, a guy who'd never ever come anywhere near New Zealand, to Mount Taranaki, which was its traditional name, the sun came up the next morning, and it's still coming up in Taranaki as far as I'm aware. So I don't think there needs to be any fear, is what I'm saying, in this area. This is a motion calling for more information for council. What can be wrong with that? Surely you want more information. If you decide you don't, I believe you're sticking your head in the sand and the issue won't go away. It'll keep coming back. Let's get the information now and try and be proactive in this area for once, even though we're perhaps 155 years behind when the problem started. When I was a kid at school in Hamilton, I remember studying the Māori Wars. Maybe we're one of the few schools that did that at Hamilton Boys High. I was always puzzled why we had a street named after Von Tempsky, given the massacres that he was involved in at the time. I could not understand that, and I'm glad it's now being addressed, how many years, 50 years later, now being looked at. I know that this report isn't about particular streets per se, but it does give rise to that sort of issue, and it's addressing perhaps something that I noticed 50 years ago was a problem. And I hope it certainly will address that. In fact, if you look at the original designs, street layouts of both Hamilton City and Hamilton East, and also some other areas like Frankton and Hamilton West, they were laid out by surveyors who weren't even in the city at the time. They were sitting in offices in Wellington and Auckland, drawing straight lines on maps, straight across gullies, straight across streams, straight across hills. And they were sticking down names of settlers and soldiers and things like that. They had no idea about this place and no connection with this place when they did that. That didn't just happen in Hamilton, that happened elsewhere around New Zealand. It was the colonial practice at the time, and I think we do much better than that now in Hamilton. We look at what was the history of an area when we're talking about street names and suburb names, and we by and large are starting to follow that. I think if you look at the newer suburbs of this city, and the street names and park names and things like that, you will see that there's a much more mixed and therefore balanced outcome in terms of that. That causes much less offence, that gives something to all of the groups living in the city. But look at Hamilton East and Frankton and Hamilton City and Hamilton West, and you'll see it's a very unbalanced view of what the origins of those areas are. So I asked a question of Roger Stratford whether he thought, given that he wanted names kept as what people were used to, well, he's talking about what people have been used to for the last 150 years. I would rather, at the same time, we took into account what people have been used to for the last 700 or 800 years as well, and get a good balance and a good mix, not just think and act as though history started when European settlers arrived. Thanks.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sometimes it takes an extreme action like attacking Captain Hamilton to start a conversation. And I'm actually grateful to this council that we are starting to become open-minded and listening to some of the people and in our city. Personally, I actually do understand the feelings about seeing historical figures on street signs. There is no Hitler Street, no Hitler Place, no Hitler City in Germany. And I think if there was, I think the Germans would have ripped it down, pulled it apart, and destroyed it very quickly. Yes, there might be other names from the past, I don't know, but there is a certain way, and our history in New Zealand is so short, and the memory is still there, and the stories have been passed down, and I'm just grateful that we can do something about this now. Yes, maybe it was a bit fast, maybe it was a bit, but everything has to be started somewhere. The first step to the future is always the one step. We have to go ahead, and I'm just grateful to Timmy Maipi that he was brave enough last week or 2 weeks ago to come to us and to tell us about the history. And you know, the winners always try to rewrite the history. I've heard that a lot of times, so have the Americans tried to rewrite the history about Germany. So, but we Germans know what the history was and what it is, and so I just applaud Tainui to come to us, to speak to us, and challenge us to look at the history and make this city the right place to change some of the names that are appropriate. So thank you.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. This concerns me somewhat. This issue is born out of an activist views. And I feel this is just the thin edge of the wedge where we are pandering to an extremist who should have been arrested and chargeable for damage when he attacked the Captain Hamilton statue. Would anybody else have been arrested for what he had done? Almost certainly. Both the Mayor and Mr Maipi stated after the briefing that you could have heard a pin drop in reference to Maipi's visit to Council. It was not that we were amazed at what he had said, it was because the Mayor had stated and gagged us from asking questions of Maipi for fear of causing him any angst. So we were muzzled. How can we look forward to the future if we're always looking in the past with a view to either remove, destroy, and sometimes, yes, controversial names in history, but that's what it is, it's our history. The Mayor states in his Chair's report that the HCC undertake work to confirm an accepted view of historical events. My question is, I asked, whose accepted views are they? Are they Mr Maipi's? There is always two sides, or probably more, to historical events, and to lump names of like Gray, Bryce and von Tempsky with the likes of Hitler is ludicrous and non-comparable. We have to stop this madness here and now, otherwise we run the risk of letting every person with an axe to grind to dictate where we go as a city and as a council above the wishes of our residents. Where do we stop if we go down this path? We have a James Street and a Cook Street in Hamilton East. Do we want these names changed as well because they could be linked to Captain James Cook? someone will almost certainly want those changed. If the street names in Grey, Bryce and Von Tempsky are changed, imagine the angst for local businesses, with those having to go to the not-so-small expense of changing websites and everything else linked to their businesses in regards to location and street name. We also have a street name Ford in Hamilton East. We're going to change that too because Holden owners might be upset. We have Cumberland Drive in Flagstaff. Now, I'm sure Scottish people, or people of Scottish heritage, may be upset about that name because in 1746, the Duke of Cumberland ordered the killing of some 1,500 to 2,000 Scottish Jacobites and the destruction of farms and total destruction of local support and livestock after the Battle of Culloden. Do we change that name? Yep. We also have Massey Street in Frankton. William Massey, a previous New Zealand Prime Minister, was accused of being a racist as he referred to New Zealand as a white man's country and that he had no love for Chinese. Do we change that street name because of offence caused? We can find offence in most things in life if we go back in history far enough. And some views or actions are deemed accepted back then, but not now, I agree. But again, it's our history. We have to look forward, not back. Do we change Gallagher Drive? Mr. Maipi certainly had a problem with Gallagher because he walked in there with a KKK thing on his head. Unacceptable behaviour. So to finish with, look, we also have a King Street here in Hamilton. Do we change that? Because that's probably caused some offence. I just think it's a little bit...
Which King?
I just think it's a little bit arsey-boo. Thank you.
Good to see the word arsey-boo's caught on. I thought it had died. Councillor Mark.
Resurrected more than anything. Yeah, there's been some really strong and impassioned debate here, and there's one of my favourite sayings. I got it from the Braveheart movie, and it was, "History will call me a liar, but history is written by people who hang the heroes." And it kind of speaks to your point, Siggy, and to your point, James, as well. History is a very subjective area, and at what point do we stick a pin in the ground and say this is accurate? Who's it accurate to? Who does it represent? There is so much on both sides of this, what I find expedient argument, that make this a very hard decision to make on which way we're going to go. On the negative, I agree with James. I don't like the way this happened, and I disagree with Siggy vehemently about this. Go and smash a statue, get attention, turn up to a meeting, get gagged, get a hearing that we didn't know that was going to come out, and all of a sudden it's reported in the paper and it gathers this kind of momentum. What's it built on? I don't like that. I applaud Māngai Māori for the way they've come in and debated, and I like the constructive conversation on the other hand. I love the fact that we're going to have a conversation as a result of this, potentially. But what worries me is that it is co-sponsored by Tainui. And you cannot stay neutral when something is co-sponsored by one of the people who it affects. But again, on the positive, I do like the fact that it's going to bring up conversation. But on the negative, suddenly it's narrower. In my discussions around this, I was of the opinion that it was more than just Māori, it was more than just Tainui, it was offence taken anywhere. And believe me, the offence industry is huge at the moment. And that's my reservation. We do not know how big this thing is going to be. It's going to be massive, massive, massive. We are arbitrarily choosing that we're going to look at this particular group of the community, and granted they are a massive and very important and significant part of the community, but we are just saying this is all we're going to focus on at the moment. There are people with grievances about everything, as James pointed out about Cumberland. So I would assume that if we are going to do this right, then we open this up to absolutely everybody. I'm encouraged by the fact that this can be done within pretty much existing budgets, so I'll support it at the moment, but it's a toughie. You know, I can see the only equitable way of doing this is do what New York did and replace the street names with numbers. You know, and we can actually do that. You know, but I don't think, you know, we all know this isn't the way that's going to go. So I'll support you, Mayor Andrew, in this one, but with some gentle trepidation, because I just think the thing is just too narrow.
Councillor Gary.
I don't support the motion, and I won't repeat what a lot of people said. I think what Mark said was very good, and what James has said was very strong and accurate too. I am very, very concerned that this was triggered by the actions of a thug who assaulted and vandalised one of our pieces of public art. I think it's appalling that we then this guy then gained himself an audience with councillors, which we weren't allowed to speak at. So I don't know whether we covered ourselves with glory at all with that, and I was part of it, to be honest. I sat there and listened to the guy speaking. And I just don't think there is any groundswell in the community for this, and I don't think there's any need to spend anyone else's, any ratepayers' money on this. I don't think this is an issue that, and it's been raised, and it'll be common vernacular for a wee while, 3, 4, 6 months down the track, it'll be gone again. So I don't support the initiative at all.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a really hard one for me. I've gone into it with an open mind, and I guess firstly, credit where credit's due. I applaud you, Mr. Mayor, for what you're trying to do here in terms of reconcile some things which we don't have clarity around. That was the best speech I've heard Councillor James make, so well done on that. I take Bunty's point on co-sponsorship. That speaks to me in that it does muddy the waters, and I think based on that agreement I can't support it because it leans to an outcome which is not, in my opinion, entirely neutral. I supported the election of Mangai Māori, and I resonate with Mangai James in his comments earlier. I just think that this motion as it sits, with the timing and with its scope, it just misses the mark, and I can't quite support it hand on heart, even though I appreciate the place it's coming from.
So I just want to remind members, well, firstly, remind members that the Boston Tea Party was started with an act of vandalism, and it's changed America, and it changed America into a free country. So sometimes things are done to get attention. In this case, there was no threat of violence against any person. I also want to remind members about the partnership that we have with Tainui, and this is Tainui land. And there is clear legal documentation to say that this is a partnership. We need to be working hand in hand. That doesn't mean giving everything away. That means just working in partnership. And that this is the first step to open up a conversation. Councillor Ryan, this ain't going away. You can vote it down. You can make every excuse about elections coming up. But it won't go away. It will come back. It will come back after the election. It will come back in three electoral cycles times, but it will come back. And it takes stepping out. It takes beginning a conversation in an official way, because in an official way it locks it down into an official process, which always comes back to this council, and that this council can turn it down in any way. So I understand your reservations, but I also believe that the tide has turned in New Zealand, and that the way that these types of things are looked at in a far more balanced way. And that's happened very quickly. The change has happened really quickly. It's happened partly with the change of this government. And it's sometimes it's very hard being a leader, because you've got to do what you know is right in your heart, even although that may be not necessarily what is going to make you the most popular person. So we'll go to the board to vote on this one. No
I
talking,
think,
please, members.
We'll just retry that. So we're just having some issues with the system, so we're going to have to vote by the hands.
No, I'm not prepared to vote by the hands on this. Could everyone write on a bit of paper for or against? No, okay. So, all those for?
Mayor King, Deputy Mayor Gallagher, Councillor Paula, Bunting, McPherson, Henry and O'Leary. 4.
Those against?
Councillors Hamilton, Taylor, Mallett, Casson, Tooman and Pascoe. The motion is carried.
Thank you. We'll now move through to the second item on the Chair's report, which is the Community Land Trust. The recommendation for this is, the motion for this is just to receive the report. So moved by Councillor Dave, seconded by Councillor Mark. The motion is to receive the report. No, it's not. I've just put the motion. So should we go straight to the vote on this? Sorry, questions? Councillor Paula? Okay, we'll go straight to the vote. Debates, Councillor Paula. Sorry, question?
So sorry, that it's just to receive the report, but that work will continue from what you discussed with us at that briefing.
No, that will come through with the report that's coming up next, the staff report.
Item 10.
So that will be
Oh,
a
sorry.
position to take it forward, okay?
Yeah.
So that's why we're only receiving this. Okay? So there's going to be plenty of chance for debate coming up. Okay, so should we just vote by the hands, all those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Okay, now we'll go to the third part of the Chair's report. So the recommendation is A, B and C on page 27. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Paula. Questions, Councillor Robb?
Yeah, I had a read through the report, and I have had previous involvement with Wintec as a tutor there. I couldn't see anything in here which really concerns me from a council perspective. I'm just wondering why we are making a submission.
So myself and Councillor Paula were invited to Wintec for the presentation on
this report.
On this report, and that's where this report came from. And the government sees us, Hamilton, the councils of the local authorities that are in the area of the existing Wintecs as being a key partner and a key people to make submissions. In fact, I think we were second to the top of those they saw most important. And that's really what got our attention and instigated this report. So I can see exactly what you're thinking and why. And
so it's more as a stakeholder in our community that we would be. There are no immediate concerns in this report that are sending red flags up that are.
Well, there could be. I mean, this is about the centralisation of all Wintecs, so this is a huge change, and so it is quite important, I think, that we do have a voice and we do put something together and probably work quite closely, possibly with Wintec on this being, you know, people who work closely with them. So,
all right, thank you.
Sorry, GM Blair.
Good morning, councillors, and thank you. Just to further to Councillor Robb's question, I've been working on behalf of the Mayor with staff, and we've met with the CEO of Wintec just to understand their position. We've also been working with Te Waka, who are also preparing a submission. So The consultation document has sort of 3 proposals. I think it's the second proposal which is the area of most relevance to Hamilton City Council. So the areas that sort of look around the local provision and the local tertiary activities in the context of the national framework, and particularly sort of one of the proposals around the regional leadership groups that are proposed to be established. And so our voice and view on that and how we can support Wintec and their view is particularly relevant to Hamilton City Council. So that'll be the position of our submission.
And just another question on that. The Tiwananga is also affected by this report because they are, what is it, an
ITO?
ITO.
Yes.
Will we also be submitting or working with them to, given that they've got a number of campuses in the city, will we be working with them also to in terms of what our submission may read or look like?
We will. The time is very short, Councillor Rob, so we will do our best to establish their position and see what we can say to support them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Angela.
Andrew, just support what Blair has just said, and my comment for feedback. I see we're seeing this submission come to the 21 March briefing. I guess my comment for feedback would be that the relevance of our submission should be focused on the importance of having those tertiary educations, whatever they may be, in the city, and the economic benefits and educational benefits that they give us, not the ins and outs of whatever a new education system might look like, because I don't think we're the experts in that space.
Yes, and I can.
I
can say, Councillor Angela, that is the sort of the direction that our submission is heading in. I think we understand where we can have a voice and where we probably shouldn't have a voice, but we recognise the really significant importance of Wintec and the other ITOs in the Waikato economy, the role they have in terms of that training they provide, particularly and the connection to the economic needs of the Waikato. So absolutely, that's part of it.
Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Questions on 2 issues. One is actually on the writing of A, B and C. It comes between B and C, and I'm just wondering about the relevance of the briefing. Like, from the way this reads, is we're going to have a briefing, and then the CEO's off to do what he's going to do anyway. Where is it stated that we're actually going to get a say in the submission in this? Because this is starting to form a little bit of a pattern.
So very similar to what happened at the Western Town Belt meeting yesterday, I think it was. We spoke and gave our thoughts. We're not a decision-making authority at a briefing like that, but staff carefully took down the feedback, and then the paper that they will bring back to us will incorporate that feedback in it. So there'll be,
right. So
for
that
example,
step's
with
missing in this process, Mayor Andrew, in that we go to a briefing, we give our feedback, and in good faith, we expect that the CEO will, take into account what we've said or what we want in this thing, but it's just kind of not stated in here.
Yeah, what normally happens if there's time, and we try and make time, is circulate the submission back to members for comment, and that's from my understanding, that's what always is, they endeavour to always do that, to bring it back to us, to go back through for more feedback. And
through the chair, councillors, that's absolutely the intention. The time frame of this process is such that the submission must be in by the 27th of March. So,
I get that.
So the process would be that, firstly, I think the submission that's going to be prepared by staff is consistent with the paragraph that the chair has included in his report at the top of page 27. So those are the sort of the areas of focus of the submission. The presentation at the briefing next week will highlight the key themes. We would take any feedback and the staff would amend the submission accordingly.
Okay.
So, Councillor Mark, if you would like, we could call a special meeting for this. I mean, it is a councillor's submission, and we do a lot of submissions, but from timing point of view, we could call a special meeting if that was important to you.
I just think I'm just cognizant of a couple of briefings we've had recently where, that we've given our feedback, but there's nothing that can be done because it's too late, and I certainly don't want to waste the room's time. I just wonder if it could be a little bit clearer, the effect that we would have on the outcome of this.
Well, it is your submission, it's not staff submission. So what councillors decide goes in there, goes in there.
Right.
As long as there isn't some legal or technical reason why it can't, and I'm sure that feedback would be given.
Okay, look, I'm comforted by what Blair said, that's absolutely fine. And just secondly, moving down the line that Councillor O'Leary was talking about there before, with regards to our focus on this, are we endorsing some of the excellent work that's been done by the likes of Smart Waikato in this field already? Because I noticed this was almost identical to what they're doing. There's a lot of educational initiatives. What I'm talking about there is they've been going for about 5 or 6 years, getting workplaces and schools more integrated, etc., which is where Wintex have been falling down in the past, or politics have been falling down in the past. Are we dabbling our toe in that area? Are we even aware of what's going on in that stuff? Or is it more around the economic?
This is, just to keep this on in scope, this is purely about the government's proposal to amalgamate the management and possibly the courses and possibly the structure and the finances of all Wintex all around New Zealand. And that's what this discussion's about, and us putting a submission in as to how we feel about that.
Yeah, I take that that's our interest, but there's a lot of stuff in here that extra to that, like page 43, all about that. But no, look, I'll let that go. That's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Councillor Paula?
No, I want to go and debate, sorry.
Okay. So we'll move to debate. Councillor Paula?
Just in the way that we put our submission forward, I support the comments that Councillor O'Leary made around where the focus should be. I would like to see you attempt to have a good conversation with BC ITO and the other ITOs, because I know that they have been meeting over the last week collectively to determine their position. I just want to say that in a city like Hamilton, where we're undergoing such fast growth at the moment, and we know that one of the impediments to getting things done on time is the construction market, is people who are in the trades, not just carpenters. We're talking about all the other things like concrete workers, glazers, tilers, a whole raft of skill sets that we need in the Waikato right now, we need in Hamilton right now to go forward. So I just think we need to make the point that we can't, if there's any transitional arrangements, that we can't afford this to slow down any trade training that might occur, because it does have an economic impact on us. Also, to be a bit cheeky, but I think why not? This is the time. If the outcome of this is that there would be a nationally based NZ Institute of Skills and Technology, and it's got to be based somewhere, why would we not join hands with other providers and say, yes, Hamilton is the right base for that National Institute? We've talked about attracting head offices from Wellington and the like for some time. I think we're very well placed in the Golden Triangle to be that very centre. So, I don't know if I'll get the support of my colleagues in including that kind of thinking in a submission, but I think, you have to be proactive to attract those opportunities to Hamilton.
So all those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Okay. So we're going to stop for a tea break so that democracy can reboot the system. I'm aware that we're trying to get things done before Paula goes up to the stage she wants to be at. So could we just maybe make this tea break? We'll just keep it sharp to 10 minutes, so that's 11:23. We'll be back, and then we'll be on to the social housing paper.